Hey everybody, I'm Tim Mooney with the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater. So, today I'm continuing with another of our series on Shakespeare's Histories on our way to exploring all 10 history plays. This time with the second of the plays, Richard II. I perform monologues from Richard II as part of my one-man play, Shakespeare's Histories, 10 epic plays at a breakneck pace, which I'll be performing online Sunday and Monday, September 20th and 21st, 2020. You can watch it as part of a pay whatever you want event on Facebook Live on Sunday or for just $5 on Zoom on Monday. My plan here is to shed a little more light into what may seem to be a tangled political web and perhaps give you a sense of just what Shakespeare might have wanted his audience to get out of that. So here's I Finally Get Richard II. This is mostly the stuff that Shakespeare doesn't talk about in Richard II because he assumes or knows that his audience already knows these things. Shakespeare seems to have worked on this play within a year or so of working on the first play of this series, King John, and we can see that some of the same things are still on his mind. You may be able to recall that King John became king in spite of the fact that a 12-year-old prince with a cleaner line of ascent to the throne, young Prince Arthur, stood in his way. Arthur conveniently, eventually dies, which looks pretty bad. This time, however, Richard, the grandson of King Edward, became king following King Edward's death when he was only 10 years old. And so Shakespeare has the inverse situation at hand. What happens when a very young, rightful king, the son of the eldest son of the king, actually does inherit the throne? This is not the Richard who has the hunchback and goes on a murderous rampage. He's Richard III and doesn't show up for another 6 plays. But in this case, this Richard does seem to have grown up to be spoiled and petulant. King Edward III had a total of 7 sons. I know, his poor wife. 2 of those sons died very young, so we really only need to know about 5 of them, and 2 of those 5, Richard's father, Edward, the Black Prince, and Lionel, the 3rd son, both died well before this play has even begun. Thomas has also died, but only just. The 3rd son, Lionel, is barely a footnote for this play, but that footnote indicates that Lionel left behind a daughter whose children would have been legitimate contenders to the throne. The fact won't matter for several plays yet, but it will become a big deal. King Edward's 4th son, John of Gaunt, is a key figure in English history. His son will become King Henry IV. His grandson will become King Henry V, and his great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter will become Queen Elizabeth I. And if you want to know which characters are getting favorable treatment from Shakespeare, your best place to start is to notice how closely they're related to Queen Elizabeth. Edward III's sons had this habit of marrying well. Most of their wives tended to bring with them huge dowries, and John of Gaunt married the daughter of the Duke of Lancaster, inheriting Lancaster's title and his fortune when he passed away a couple of years later. He later marries the daughter of the King of Castile, a rich kingdom in Spain, which made Gaunt rich multiple times over. She also died young, and Gaunt took a 3rd wife who had already given birth to a couple of his sons. They were, as they say, bastard sons, but another footnote, their eventual legitimacy meant that their offspring would also fight over the throne several plays down the road. Thomas of Gloucester, the 6th son of Edward III, died prior to the beginning of this play, and that's our inciting incident. Thomas was a strong and popular prince. He dominated his nephew, King Richard II, through most of his teenage reign. And as Richard came of age, Thomas tried to have Richard deposed. They struggled back and forth through Richard's 20s from 1387 to 1397, but it wasn't until September of 1397 that Richard was able to have his uncle Thomas arrested, imprisoning him in Calais. On the other side of the English Channel, one part of France that England still held onto. Under the watchful eye of one of his closest companions, Thomas Mowbray. Richard's uncle Thomas quickly dies under Mowbray's care. We don't know why or how he died, but it looks very suspicious. The play gets underway in January of 1398 as Henry Bolingbroke, John of Gaunt's eldest son, is accusing Mowbray of assassinating Thomas of Gloucester. Mowbray accuses Bolingbroke of slander, and both men throw down their gloves, thereby challenging a duel. Given that Richard really doesn't want to talk about this stuff out loud, Shakespeare doesn't explain much of this background either. But even if Richard didn't have Mowbray kill Gloucester, even the possibility of bringing up that thought in people's minds will leave a black mark by his name. We may remember from last time that King John was accused of having killed his nephew, Prince Arthur, and even if it was true that Arthur actually died in an innocent fall from the tower window, the suspicion undermined John's legitimacy for the rest of his reign. And so, purposefully avoiding any discussion of the complaint, Richard declares the duel is on, and that they will meet again in Coventry on St. Lambert's Day for the great face-off. St. Lambert's Day is September 17th, 8 long months away. But in this play, it's just Scene 3, so it feels a lot sooner. We assume that both Henry and Mowbray had good reason to spend some time at the gym to get in shape for the fight. Cue the montage from Rocky. They gather at Coventry in central England, and following all of the many formalities, the two men square off to duel. But suddenly, Richard calls a halt to the proceedings. Rather than fight, he will send them both into exile. Henry for 6 years, Mowbray for the rest of his life. This was a decision that made nobody happy. Sure, one person would have died in that duel, but both people are made miserable rather than just one, and anybody who dragged their butt halfway across the country hoping for the excitement of witnessing a fight comes away empty-handed. It was right about this time that the English viceroy in Ireland was assassinated. Richard needs an army to go throw his weight around in Ireland for a bit. Unfortunately, armies cost money, and Richard dreads the option of leasing out some of the royal lands as farmland, which always looks a little trashy for the king. Fortunately, in January 1399, a year after the start of the play, but for us it's just Act 2, Scene 1, old John of Gaunt dies. Richard is practically giddy at the possibility of appropriating Gaunt's estate. Gaunt lives long enough to leave some harsh words about the hard times that England has suffered under Richard's leadership. This royal throne of kings, this sceptered isle, this earth of majesty, this seat of Mars, this other Eden, demi-paradise, this precious stone set in the silver sea, this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England. That England that was wont to conquer others hath made a shameful conquest of itself. I skipped a few lines in there, but you should be able to spot one of Shakespeare's most constant themes, which came up in our last video about King John. This England never did nor never shall lie at the proud foot of a conqueror, but when it did first help to wound itself. When Shakespeare, who is famous for having a pretty big vocabulary, comes this close to repeating himself, you know it's a pretty big deal. He was looking at all of the petty squabbles from the War of the Roses on down to the present time, dreading the thought that civil war might rear its ugly head. It's also a lesson that we might want to pay attention to ourselves. Richard seizes all of Gaunt's possessions that he and his friends can lay their hands on, and this is his biggest mistake. While Henry Bolingbroke, Gaunt's son, may have been exiled, he was never tried for any crime. If the king thinks he can just help himself to the inheritance of any nobleman, then who is safe? With his war now paid for by stealing Henry's inheritance, Richard goes off to fight in Ireland, but still makes no progress with the Irish. In early July 1399, Henry Bolingbroke sneaks back into England, landing on the west coast and marching east. Within about 3 weeks, Richard learns of Henry's return and sends the Lord Salisbury back across the sea to Wales to raise a Welsh army, and then proceeds to linger in Ireland for another 18 days. Was he afraid of the fight that was awaiting him? Was he drinking and carousing? Was he just trying to decide what to do? Salisbury raises a Welsh army, but they get tired of waiting. By the time Richard returns, it's August. The Welsh have disbanded, and Richard is a sitting duck. Bolingbroke has swept quickly across England, killing some of Richard's allies along the way. Richard falls into a despair and, feeling sorry for himself, delivers the famous speech, "For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings." As beautiful and poetic as this speech is, it will inspire absolutely no one to fight. You can catch me doing that speech as part of Shakespeare's Histories, 10 epic plays at a breakneck pace, and it's worth comparing this speech with another speech given in advance of a battle, Henry V's St. Crispin's Day speech, which you can find here. As you watch these speeches, you might think to yourself, which one of these would inspire me to rush into battle? While all of these things seem to happen at once, yet another month goes by as Henry Bolingbroke takes Richard back to stand trial before Parliament in London, during which the Bishop of Carlisle famously prophesies to Henry Bolingbroke that, "If you raise this house against this house, the blood of English shall manure the ground," which it eventually does. Richard is at last officially deposed on September 30th, 1399. It's Act 5, and it's been a full 2 years following our inciting incident, Gloucester's death. Richard is sent off to be imprisoned in Pomfret Castle, leaving with what also turns out to be a very accurate prophecy. All of the historical prophecies that Shakespeare writes into his plays come true, given, of course, the benefit of hindsight. He tells the Lord Northumberland, who was crucial in sponsoring Henry's rise to power, "Thou shalt think, though he divide the realm and give thee half, it is too little, helping him to all. He shall think that thou, which knowest the way to plant unrightful kings, wilt know again, to pluck him headlong from the usurped throne." Clearly, Northumberland is going to be a royal pain in the next plays, Henry IV Parts 1 and 2. Of course, a still living former King Richard will continue to haunt Henry Bolingbroke, who is conveniently overheard sighing, "Have I no friend will rid me of this living fear?" We revisit Richard one final time in his Tower jail with another gorgeous speech reflecting on the fragility of life moments before he is assassinated. And King Henry IV's new reign is off to a rocky start, a monarchy that it'll take 2 plays to work through. We'll have explainer videos on those in the coming months. Hit subscribe. So that's I finally get Richard III. Hopefully your understanding of this bit of background will double your ability to understand what's going on in this play. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more. You'll also want to tune in to catch Shakespeare's Histories, 10 epic plays at a breakneck pace, this Sunday and Monday, September 20th and 21st, 2020, and again in a couple of months, all shows at 8 p.m. Please swing by timmooneyRep.com for all the latest details of the performance schedule, or to book an event for your own school, theater, conference, in person, or via remote. I do these explainer videos just about every week, releasing them on Friday in advance of the coming shows. You can go back and see the first one I did on Shakespeare's Histories here, which will give you even more insight into the overall arc of these 10 plays. And there you'll find more videos on lots of Shakespeare stuff. We've also got a Patreon campaign. If you'd like to support this work, we are a not-for-profit institution at patreon.com/TimMooneyRep. We have giveaways of lots of swag, like this book, for instance, and even drawings for free performances. And this and lots more goodies can be found at TimMooneyRep.com. Thanks for watching. See you on the stage.